These are the most popular denominations of paper currency in the United States at this time. We have the $1 bill, the $2 bill, the $5 bill, the $10 bill, the $20 bill, the $50 bill, and the $100 bill. The men whose pictures are drawn on these various forms of currency each had interesting lives, and we will talk a little about these men on money. First of all, the $2 bill. Yes, there is a $2 bill. It's not as popular as the other forms of currency, but you will find $2 bills now and then. The $2 bill has the portrait of a fellow named Thomas Jefferson, who had something in common with Ben Franklin. Both of these men were authors and they were inventors, among other things. We'll talk more about them both as we progress. Ben Franklin also had something in common with Alexander Hamilton. Neither one of these men, Alexander Hamilton and Ben Franklin, neither one was President of the United States. Now, there are three people here who had something in common: Abraham Lincoln and Andrew Jackson and Alexander Hamilton. Each of these men was shot. Each one received a bullet wound. Alexander Hamilton died in a duel. He was shot by Aaron Burr, who was a former vice president of the United States. They had a duel, and Alexander Hamilton was shot, and he died the following day. Abe Lincoln was assassinated. He was shot, and he died the following day. Andrew Jackson had a duel with someone. The other person shot first, and the bullet lodged near Andrew Jackson's heart. Now, one might think Andrew Jackson lost that duel. He did not. With the bullet near his heart, Andrew Jackson slowly took aim at his opponent, who was reloading, and Andrew Jackson shot him and killed him. So we can say some of these people had rather interesting experiences in their lives. Ben Franklin was struck by lightning. Ben Franklin was an excellent swimmer at a time when most people did not know how to swim. Ben Franklin was a writer. He was a publisher. He was one of 17 children, and he started out poor, and he became wealthy as time passed. If you really want to spend 15 minutes at least of laughing, look for quotes of Ben Franklin. He was like a Groucho Marx. Ben Franklin and Abe Lincoln, you'll find quotes from each of these men. They could have been Saturday Night Live hosts, and the show Saturday Night Live would be much improved with their presence. Speaking of being shot, Ulysses S. Grant was in battle riding on a horse, and his horse was shot out from underneath him. U.S. Grant was a general and a farmer and a president. Andrew Jackson was a general, he was a farmer, and he was a president. George Washington was a general, he was a farmer, and he was a president. What these men went through as far as their medical condition over the years gives us some idea of their toughness. George Washington, at age 15, had diphtheria, which is a life-threatening illness. During his lifetime, he also had smallpox, he had tuberculosis, and he had occurring and reoccurring bouts with malaria. Thomas Jefferson, who by the way was the third president, George Washington was the first, Thomas Jefferson sort of had smallpox. He was inoculated against smallpox, and during that era, the early 1800s, getting an inoculation, what we might call a vaccination today, but it was not actually a vaccination. Being inoculated against smallpox meant that you got a mild case of smallpox. Thomas Jefferson also was an attorney, and he represented doctors who gave smallpox inoculations who often found themselves being victims of beatings, and sometimes their houses were burned because people were afraid that the inoculation would cause an outbreak of smallpox. Abraham Lincoln probably had smallpox when he delivered his Gettysburg Address. Again, a life-threatening illness, and he probably had smallpox. General Grant did not have smallpox, but a lot of his Union Army generals and men did have smallpox during the Civil War, and so it affected his actions during that war as a general. Andrew Jackson. Andrew Jackson, when he was a prisoner of war at age 14 during the Revolutionary War, he and his brother both were being held by the British in a prisoner of war camp. Both of the young men developed smallpox. Andrew Jackson's mother went to the prison and asked for the release of her sons, who were both very ill. And then, on one horse, Andrew Jackson's mother and his very ill brother rode back 45 miles to where they lived, and Andrew Jackson walked without a jacket and without shoes in a rainy weather 45-mile walk while he had smallpox, and it was thought that he would die. He did become delirious, but he recovered. While he was a prisoner of war, he received a slashing with a sword. A British officer told Andrew Jackson to clean his boots. Andrew Jackson refused. The British officer pulled out a sword and tried to strike Andrew Jackson in the head. Andrew Jackson held up his arm to deflect the blow, and he received a cut that went all the way to the bone. Benjamin Franklin, who was possibly his highest office was ambassador to France. He was never president, as I mentioned before. One of his sons died of smallpox, and Benjamin Franklin very early suggested people getting inoculated against smallpox, and he wished that he had had his family inoculated. George Washington did not attend college. Ben Franklin quit school at age 10 to go to work. Abraham Lincoln had about 1 year of actual schooling. Andrew Jackson did not attend college. What would these men be doing today if they were around? George Washington would be a farmer. Thomas Jefferson, who was a great attorney, among other things, he would be an attorney representing people who were down on their luck or very poor, or people who had medical conditions. Abraham Lincoln would be a stand-up comic, and he would be a movie star who would do Jim Carrey type movies. Alexander Hamilton would be Secretary of the Treasury still, or he might be a financier with some Wall Street firm. Ulysses S. Grant would be a horseman. He was a great horseman, and he would probably raise thoroughbreds for the Kentucky Derby. Andrew Jackson would be a masked professional wrestler. Benjamin Franklin, we know what he would be. He would be a YouTuber.